Welcome, Sarah. Great to have you on the podcast. Firstly, we'll get into a bunch of different things today, but firstly, I wanted to ask kind of, I guess, back at the start, what made you get into marketing? What's your backstory? What excites you about marketing?
Yeah, so I've been in the marketing space for about 15 years now. And so after college, I did a bit of traveling. I actually went to Peru, which I know is where you live, and a number of other countries.
Mhm.
And then I came back to Kansas City, which is where Duct Tape Marketing is based out of. And I actually started as an intern, not even really sure at that point that I wanted to go into marketing. But over the last 15 years, I've played all the different roles, not all, but a lot of different roles in our company. And so I started as intern, I was community manager, I was account manager for clients, I was a fractional CMO for our clients, I was our COO, and then in December I stepped into the CEO seat. And so I've really evolved and grown with duct tape marketing. But over those years, we've always focused on the small business space. And so that's really what keeps me going is working with small business owners and helping them simplify marketing. So it's not this confusing, overwhelming thing, which it can feel like right now, especially with AI, which I know is a lot of what we're going to talk about.
That's really cool. And so, what's it like being a CEO? I mean, that sounds like it would be quite hectic. Like, what does an average day sort of look like for you?
Yeah, it is a bit hectic, but I really enjoy the work. And as I was just mentioned, I've played so many different roles in our company that it makes me, I think, a better leader at this point because it's not that I came in as the CEO and, just started leading the team. It's like I know what you were going through as a fractional CMO to someone on my team, and I know the struggles and I know the challenges and I know how rewarding it can be. But like I can relate to the people that I now am able to oversee because I've walked in their shoes before. And so really, my day consists of, guiding our team, leading our team, innovating new products and offerings. I'm writing a book right now. I do a lot of speaking and podcasting, but I also, are and still running the operations of our business as well. So yeah, a lot going on, a lot on my plate, but I love the work that I'm able to do.
Yeah, it sounds like you have to wear like a lot of different hats, obviously strategy, human resources, like mentor, but also technical, visionary, like a lot of different hats. Like, do you find it hard to sort of switch between like the tasks? Like, I find for me, I'm very much like a flow state person. So when
Yeah.
I have a task, like, I just want to like go all in and just forget about everything else. But then sometimes I find it really hard to like switch into, say, something more like something different, like from creative to say analytical. Do you find that
Yeah.
happens a lot, or are all of your tasks kind of more similar in that sense?
Yeah, I have to be good about blocking off time on my calendar for things that require flow state, like things that I really need to get into. So like writing, for example, like I have to have like a good block of time. It's really hard for me to like do that and then jump into a sales call and then do this and then jump back. It is hard and it's really distracting. And so I try to figure out like when am I at my best capacity each day? And I try to block off some blocks on my calendar to do more of that deep work because then the rest of my day is sales conversations, team conversations, client conversations. So it's a lot of time on Zoom.
Mhm.
And so I've really been cognizant over the years of like, how can we actually block off my time where I can actually work on things and not just talk to people all day, which is
Right.
fun.
Yeah, it's all about balance.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. And so I know you mentioned you're sort of writing a book, and we sort of previously spoke a little bit about this, sort of helping small business owners with AI in their marketing. What's the book about? What can people expect from that?
Yeah, so it's called Unchained, Breaking Free from Broken Marketing Models. And so to give you a little context first, we've been a marketing agency ourselves for 25 years-ish at this point. And so I joined about 15 years ago, but duct tape marketing was around before I joined. And so we've been serving small business clients as a marketing agency for all of those years. But there's a lot of struggle in the agency space for both sides. And so, from the agency side of things, there's a lot of challenges in running an agency. And so, maintaining profitability as you scale, meeting client demands, retaining team, like there's just a lot of challenges in the space. And then also, as an agency, previously you had to know everything when it comes to marketing. And there's so many different components. There's strategy, and then there's execution on all the different channels, there's data and analytics. And so, there's just a lot to be able to provide to clients. On the other side of things, we've started feeling for a while now that small businesses that outsource their marketing completely, they're not really building an internal asset that they own. They're basically relying on other people to do their marketing and handle their marketing. And let's say one day this business wants to sell, they don't have a predictable marketing system within their business that will increase the sale value. They also experience a lot of loss of control and confusion when working with outsourced solutions. So we've been feeling this for a while. But now the evolution of AI, I think it's caused the model to break faster than it was going to, because now small businesses, what I'm seeing, are starting to bring in different AI tools to try to replace some of the agency or outsourced work that they were doing previously, because they now have these AI tools that can help with things like content production and social media and SEO and email marketing. And so they're starting to bring marketing execution in-house. But there's a big challenge in all of that, because if you bring in AI tools without proper strategy in place, you're essentially just creating noise, causing confusion for your team and also the clients that you're trying to interact with. And so small businesses are bringing in AI, but not strategically. And so this is where the opportunity is, I think, for agencies or fractional CMOs, which is a lot of what we do and who we serve, is to shift from offering execution for your clients to offering strategy and leadership and building out AI systems to help empower internal teams to be able to handle the execution. So that was a lot, but that's essentially the foundation of the book. We call it the anti-agency model. And so it's essentially making that shift from doing all of marketing for your clients to empowering them to be able to handle execution based on strategy.
That's really cool. And I think, really good point to make about, yeah, like I guess there's kind of two parts of like on the one side, business owners implementing AI, like you said, without kind of a clear strategy or a system. And then also like bringing in that asset of like knowing how the marketing works and having that kind of, yeah, merging with like a marketing agency and doing more like of a automation or AI implementation, especially with things like custom GPTs. I had a client come to me and they're like, we've got our custom GPTs, like we're creating our blogs, but we've got a bottleneck in the review side. So like, can you help us like, review the content and get it published and all of that? So I think, yeah, like it's a really cool thing that it's shifting from the marketer's role, from doing everything, like you said, and being more of that implementation kind of high level strategic partner.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about, even like internal marketing teams. Like you might have someone in place that was like writing all the blog content and creating all the social posts from scratch. And even that person in an internal marketing department or an agency should be elevating to overseeing the process and the system by providing the strategic guidance on the front end and reviewing the output on the back end. But now using AI systems and tools to be able to do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to like research and actually creating that content. And so it's really helping marketers across the board shift from, if you were an executor, to shift from executor to more of like an orchestrator, where you're orchestrating systems and processes versus doing all of the doing.
Mm. That's cool. And so, in terms of like marketers or business owners, what are some of the kind of main systems or processes that you see as being automated and having the most positive effect within like a wider organization?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. So everything we talk about always comes back to the need for strategy. So we've been saying for 30 years, strategy before tactics. Now we're saying strategy before technology, because, I think some businesses think about, oh, let's just bring in AI, and they bring in tools, but they haven't actually thought about like, what are we actually trying to accomplish and what are the outcomes we're working towards and what are our goals? And so I think you need to take a step back from an individual business perspective and map out. We have a marketing strategy pyramid. The bottom level is the business strategy. So you need to map out your business strategy. The middle is the marketing strategy. And then you need to map out your team strategy, which is the top. So once you have the business and marketing strategy in place, you will then be able to say, okay, what humans do we have and how can we up level them? And then you might be able to answer the question of what automations should we bring in, because you would have put in the work to figure out, again, what are you actually trying to do and what are you trying to accomplish? And so, for example, let's say you're writing a lot of blog content for a business, and that's a goal, is you want to build like a hub page or something long term. And so that's one of your strategic priorities after you've gone through that whole business and marketing strategy exercise. then I think you can say, okay, how do we automate that or how do we move faster on that? And a lot of that goes to like creating custom GPTs and training on the business and the strategy and the tone of voice and the ideal clients and the messaging on the front end. It's then, creating the content within ChatGPT, and then you can set up, automations to have it go all the way to your blog and essentially be ready to hit publish by a human. Because I always would recommend human on the front end, human on the back end before it goes live. But you can automate a lot of the steps that goes from like ChatGPT to all the way to getting it optimized on your WordPress website. But again, my push is go back to the strategy, outline what your key priorities and initiatives are for that quarter, and then think about, can AI help us move faster on these so we can stay higher level?
No, I think that's a good point. And it's actually something I was reading on Reddit of all places today about someone who runs like an automation AI agency. And they were saying, yeah, like a customer will come in and be like, oh, we want this solution. And then they do like a full review of their systems. And they're like, oh, actually, you need this like tool B, not tool A. And so it's like, I think that's, something that business owners and even marketers need to consider of like, a client might come in wanting a specific tool and thinking that's going to solve their problems, but without doing a full review, like it might not be the best, roadmap to get there. It might still work, but it might not work as efficiently, or it might create more bottlenecks. So there's all these different kind of flow on effects. So I think, yeah, starting with the goal and having someone, a human at the start and the end is a really cool process. Yeah.
Yeah. And because I think if you don't start with the goal, then you just bring in all of these tools, and then your team has to understand all of these different tools, and you still don't really know what you're working towards. And so that's why
Yeah.
everything should come back to like the business strategy. What's the 1 year and 3 year revenue growth goals? What's our mission, vision, values? What are all those things? Then the marketing strategy, then the team. And then you can start thinking about the tools. And then it allows you to bring in tools with the purpose in many cases to elevate your existing team versus just causing confusion with them. So I think it's a really important, and that's what I encourage people to do is like, don't just bring in more tools, like literally take a step back, pause, spend time on creating the actual strategy, and then plug in tools as it makes sense. And then in that sense, you're building a marketing department and you're not just building a collection of tools.
No, I think that's cool. And I think that would ultimately help with overwhelm too. Like I know myself included, I'll be like, oh my gosh, there's so many AI tools out there. Like help, like how do I know what to implement and what to do? And it can be a little bit of like, oh, this company's using this tool, so I'm going to use that tool. Or this person said this tool. And it can be a bit of like, overwhelm and can get quite messy. But I think even if it takes a bit longer in the long run to like, or sorry, longer in the short term to build that foundation and do that research of, oh, okay, like this is where we want to get to and this is what we need, to take that step back and do that research, I think ultimately it'll speed things up in the long run.
Yeah, it gives you clear direction on your marketing moving forward, and it gives you something to work towards, and it aligns the whole team in understanding. And so before even AI was a thing, a lot of businesses struggled with just doing different tactics. And so they would just, I need to be on Meta for advertising because my competitors are, but they didn't take a step back to analyze, like, are there actual clients there? And then if the answer is yes, like, then they didn't analyze how should we message to them specifically, and what should our nurture campaigns to guide the customer journey look like, and how should we optimize this landing page? And so people just have for years dove into tactics without taking a step back and saying, if I'm going to dive into that tactic, well, should I? And if I'm going to do it, how are we going to be most effective? What are we going to track? What are all the assets we need to focus on? And so it's for a long time been an issue in the small business space of just diving into all of these different things. And then all of a sudden, I see it all the time. A small business owner is on like 10 different channels without proper tracking. They have no idea what's actually working and what's not working, but they just keep spending. And then all of a sudden, in their mind, marketing's confusing and it doesn't work. And so my pushback on that is marketing does work, but oftentimes it works when we can simplify, when we can take a step back, as you were saying, we can think big picture, we can understand like target market and messaging and customer journey to then guide those channels. And when you can take that step back, it allows you to then say, okay, if we're going to do these 5 things, what metrics do we need to put into place or track to understand if those 5 things are successful or not? And then use the metrics to then determine if you should keep doing those 5 things or not. And so If you're feeling overwhelmed as a business owner, it's not about doing more often. It's about doing less, but doing those things well.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's very easy to get like shiny object syndrome and be like, oh, that's gonna do this and that's gonna do that. And, before you know it, you're digging in a direction and spending time and money, implementing these tools that are not taking you where you want to go. And so, yeah, it's very much like a simplifying marketing. I think so many people, this is, I guess, maybe a little bit of a pet peeve, but like, when
Mhm.
people overcomplicate things and it's
Yeah.
like, just bringing that simplicity back and bringing that, okay, like we want to get to like point A to point B, like how do we get there, or like really simplifying, okay, rather than trying to hit every channel at once, like let's start with one channel and test that. And does that work? And if not, or, and then reevaluating as you go rather than trying to do everything all at once can just be, yeah, really chaotic.
Chaotic and just noisy and expensive.
Yeah.
So exactly, that's typically like what we recommend is to take a step back in the beginning and plan out your marketing strategy in like a 30 to 45 day period is typically what we recommend for clients. But then after that, we recommend planning marketing in like quarterly segments. And so you create your list of priorities and reoccurring tasks when you finish marketing strategy, and you answer the question of what are we going to track. And then on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, you should be paying attention to the metrics. And then on a quarterly basis, you should then do a bit of a strategic planning where you're planning out the next 3 months. Because that's also where I see some small businesses struggle is they want to have like a year-long marketing plan, and it's like, who knows where marketing will be in a year from now.
Or AI.
And so, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
impossible to plan out further than I would say 3 months at this point. I mean, not even changing so quickly. And so it's typically recommend planning in like shorter sprints, paying attention to the metrics along the way, and then answering the question of, okay, should we keep doing this thing? Is it working? Is it successful? Is it actually driving revenue and not just getting likes and exposure? And then if the answer is yes, like, should you put more of an effort onto it? Or if the answer is it's not being successful, should you give it more time to optimize it further to see if there's a chance? But when you're starting with, a handful of priorities, we usually do like 3 to 5 per quarter with our clients. It allows you to really focus on them and give them a chance versus just trying to, throw content on every single channel out there.
Hmm. No, I think that's a really good point. It was something I was speaking with another guest about actually on the podcast was, making sure that you're picking the right content to get you to your goals and like thinking about like where are your customers hanging out rather than just spraying, like you said, spraying content on every platform. And so what do you see as being maybe some of the impacts of AI on marketing, maybe good and bad, like that people could be aware of or use it for?
Yeah, I think marketing is being drastically impacted by AI, both from a strategic and an execution standpoint. And so let's start with strategy because that's what we've been doing for years and years for clients. Like before, when we were doing marketing strategy, it was all kind of manual research, all of the stuff, it took a lot of time. And so now with the evolution of tools like ChatGPT and others out there, you're able to do things like a deep research report on top 5 competitors, and you're able to generate this, multi-page report within 15 minutes, where you just give the prompt and you wait. It's not like you're spending 10 to 15 minutes. And so it's allowed us to get more research and data faster for clients, which then allows us to make more of an impact in our marketing strategy because we're able to stay in the high level strategic communication, empathetic, like speaking to humans, connecting with humans type of role, where then we're able to use AI to do some of the tedious, time consuming stuff. And so I think it's really exciting for the small business space because before, if you would have tried to do a deep research report, you would have had to either spend a lot of hours or you would have had to pay a lot of money. And
Right.
now, you can do it with a ChatGPT account. And so it's made marketing strategy more accessible, which I think is exciting, but it still needs to be guided and done well. And with, the right insight and information. And then on the marketing execution side of things, like it's completely changing because, as we talked about earlier, like before a human had to like sit down and research a blog post and then write the outline and then write it from scratch and then edit it and then go publish it out and like do all of the steps manually. Now they're moving into more of a manager role. So I'm talking about how everyone's kind of moving into an orchestrator or manager role where they're then overseeing a process or a system that's built to help get the blog post from idea all the way to publish. And so it's drastically impacting right now, but I think it's going to continue, obviously, to
Mhm.
make bigger changes when agents become, more of part of everyone's life. And so there's going to be a time in the near future where, you might have an agent that you're like, I want to buy a new camping bag. We went camping this weekend, so that's why I thought about that. And so these are the criteria. And then your agent would be able to go out, shop for the camping bag, pay for it, and have it shipped to you. And so your agent's going to interact with like other agents online to basically go through that whole entire process.
Right.
And so it's just crazy for me to think about how marketing will shift when all of that is in place even further. And so someone asked me on a podcast recently, they're like, where do you see marketing being in 3 years from now? I'm like, no idea. No idea.
Yeah.
To be honest, it is changing so fast that
And
it's
anybody,
hard to predict.
sorry, I've been around, but anybody who claims to know, I'm just like, you're full of shit. Sorry, but
Yeah. I'm like, I can tell you where I think it's going to be in like 3 months from now. But other than that, like everything is changing and evolving so fast. So it's already
right.
drastically shaken up marketing. It's going to continue to do so. I saw an article by Forbes recently and they said like uh, they estimate like 3 out of 5 marketing roles are going to be replaced by AI in the next couple of years. Don't quote me exactly, but it was something along those lines.
Mhm.
And I agree. I'm already seeing that. And so that's where, my call to agencies is don't just keep offering execution to clients.
Mm.
It will be a race to the bottom in terms of pricing because AI will help them do it faster and more effectively in some cases. And so
Mm.
my call to agencies is to shift from executors to leaders and builder of AI systems because I believe that's the direction that our small businesses are going, but also B, where they need the most support as well.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a good point of, yeah, that's where the market's sort of heading. And also, like you said, that's where they need the most support. Because, I mean, small businesses don't have the time or the knowledge or the skill set a lot of the time to implement these tools, to know which tools to implement, to know how to set up like a custom GPT or what have you.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a lot of value that marketing agencies can bring if they are to pivot and do like a retainer system, but for implementation of an AI automation, whether that's a marketing automation or a system or like something. I mean, I read on LinkedIn that someone just got paid 35 grand to implement a custom like automation for a law firm where it was kind of like an internal chat GPT where because of privacy issues and all of that,
Mm.
they basically created like an internal system on the back of ChatGPT so that like all of the client documentation and everything was protected and kept confidential. So there's, I think, going to be so many like use cases and opportunities like that coming. And the marketing agencies that will succeed and the people that will succeed are the ones who pivot and can adapt. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think small business is needed because I speak to a lot of small businesses on a regular basis. And just last week, I was speaking to a group of 15 entrepreneurs, like all run very successful companies in different industries. And I was talking on AI. I was presenting on, how to approach AI strategically, essentially was the topic. And before I started, I asked them all, I was like, what's your experience with AI today? Because I was curious as how to adapt my presentation, but literally everyone around this room said just dabbling in AI. And the
Wow.
consensus was not that they didn't think it was valuable because they all agreed it was valuable. It was that they were overwhelmed and didn't know how to get started.
Yeah.
And with me living like deep in the AI world, like it's overwhelming for me. Like
Yeah.
there's
Me
so
too.
much to learn. Yeah, there's so much to learn and there's so much coming out and so much changing. And so it's very overwhelming. And so I can understand to those, women entrepreneurs, like they're not in marketing, like they're not in AI as much as so for them to like bring in these systems to their business, like they just don't even know where to get started.
Yeah.
And so my message to them was like start with one platform, like understand what your needs are, like go back to the whole strategy piece, but then bring in one platform that can help you work towards your goals and good at it, and then continue to evolve to more systems from there. Because it's overwhelming for a lot of people, but my message also is to them that your competitors are doing it and they're going to keep doing it and it's going to be harder to compete. And so
Mm.
the time is now. If you feel like you've been putting it off, I think the time is now to get started and bringing it into your business.
Yeah, I think that's cool about focusing on like one tool and one process to automate or one thing at a time can really
Yeah.
help simplify the overwhelm. Especially for people who aren't spending like I spend hours a day just playing around with ChatGPT and AI tools with my business. And so for most people, like they're not doing that. Then they might
Yeah.
spend half an hour every now and then, or some not at all. And so it's like that's where I think a lot of the value is like, well, if you don't have the time or the skill set and you don't know how to learn, like go and hire someone who does know and can
Yeah.
help you implement that, yeah, in the long run. Especially if it
Yeah.
ends up outsourcing or taking over some, employee jobs or helping them be reallocated to another department so that you can produce more and save time, like then it's a very tangible, measurable outcome or ROI that they're investing and seeing a positive result.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point on the outcome or ROI. Like with AI, when you're bringing it in and you're using it for the first time, or your team is, it's like if you can get people a quick win early on by seeing how they can save time on a task that drained them before, they'll ultimately be bought in and continue to explore and learn more. Versus if you bring in a tool and it's just kind of complicated and confusing and it takes them a while to learn, oftentimes they'll move on to everything else that's on their plate. And so when you're bringing in AI systems, I think focusing on the quick win is a really important piece. There's an author, Jeff Woods, he wrote AI Driven Leader. It's a really great book on how to bring in AI as really like a thought partner, is essentially his whole foundation of his book. But in it, I don't know if it's in his book or if it was in a newsletter, but he talked about how you should analyze your time right now and write down all the skills that you're doing on a regular basis. And then out of all of those skills, identify what's becoming more important, kind of staying stable, or becoming less important or valuable in the age of AI. And so then after you do that, you should really focus like most of your time on the things that are becoming more important. And then on the 80% that's left over, think about how can you bring in AI to help you with those tasks so you have more time to finish and to focus on that top 20%. And I thought that was a really good thing and a good exercise to do with yourself as an entrepreneur, business owner, but also with your team, because then he also says, if you do that with your team, you can analyze like what skills do they need to develop and get better at, and then you can put in training in place to help them up level. Because we've talked about a couple times, like people are moving from doers to managers, even if they're just managing AI. But for someone that's never had to oversee processes and systems and communicate, even though they're communicating with AI, it's a different skill set.
Right.
Excuse me.
Right. And one that they'll need to learn to keep themselves from having their job taken from AI. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm.
And especially if you identify that is something really important, it then allows you to spend your time up leveling and helping them accomplish that.
Mm. That's cool. And I think as something that we talk about a lot on the podcast is how can employees sort of, or people in general, businesses future proof themselves against AI. And I think very much like it's leaning in, it's going, okay, like rather than being afraid that AI is going to take my job or putting my head in the sand, it's thinking, how can I like lean in? How can I learn? Like you mentioned, how can maybe I shift from becoming like an operator to a manager? And, maybe even say to my boss, look, I've been researching AI. I think this tool might really help our business, and really kind of pioneering the space in an organization to really future proof yourself.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to future proof yourself, and also as a business leader thinking about how can you future proof your team based on what we were talking about. And so it's thinking about like what are those skills that are going to become more important. And a lot of times in marketing specifically, it's things like, connecting with humans, it's empathy, it's communication, it's being strategic, it's understanding big picture. And so if those are the things that are going to continue to be more important, how can you future proof yourself, your business, and your team? And so going back to like the agency shift that I was talking about earlier, we could just keep executing as we've been executing for so long, or we could make the shift based on what the market is telling us to future proof our business. And that's the decision we made.
Mm, I think that's really cool. And so within we sort of talked about like what agencies can do within maybe your business, like are there specific processes that you've automated or tools that you use within your team on a sort of regular basis?
Yeah. So one of our favorites is a tool. The company is Atomic Elevator. The tool is called Ella. And so I think of Ella as a marketing operating system. And so what's really beautiful about Ella is it is a marketing tool built by marketers, essentially. And so big user of ChatGPT. I've been for a long time now, or as long as it's been a thing. But ChatGPT is, I would say, more of a like a generalist tool that can do a lot of things. Ella is just meant for marketing, and so Ella is trained on marketing best practices, frameworks, approaches, and then Ella also has a really great approach to training Ella before you start using it. And so you basically build out a brand bot for your brand where you give it really important information in terms of like messaging and ideal client profiles and tone of voice guidelines and leadership stories, and all of the things. And so you train out Ella, and then Ella is able to help you with creating strategy moving forward, but also executing as well. And so we use Ella for a lot of our marketing components in terms of like email and social and blog content and landing page optimization, and a lot of that stuff for our own business, but we also use Zella for a lot of our clients as well. So that's one of the I think most exciting opportunities in terms of technology that we're using right now.
That's cool. I like the idea of a brand bot and setting up with all of the tonality and everything. I'm sure that would save like a lot of time having to reprompt. Is it similar to like a custom GPT or is it sort of different in a way?
It's similar, but the difference then is it gives you like it asks you a series of questions, so it guides you in terms of creating the strategy, where right now with a custom GPT it's kind of on you to bring that knowledge and set it up so it's basically, yeah, so Ella asks you a series of questions to get the information that Ella needs, so it guides that process, which I think is incredibly valuable, because a lot of small businesses using ChatGPT, like I hear it all the time. Oh yeah, we're all using it different ways, and there's no cohesiveness or consistency is in that, because you're kind of leaving it up to your team members to actually set up the custom GPT correctly, to actually use it in the same way, to be consistent with it. And so there are a lot of challenges in that, where Ella guides you in setting up the brand bot, but then essentially it has like guardrails, I would say, because then she's, producing but based on marketing best practices and your brand, because you've put in all of that training on the front end. And so it makes the consistency of the output so much greater than, multiple people using their own custom GPTs for a company.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. It sounds almost like a chat GPT wrapper in a sense where they've put, like you said, those guardrails in and, prompting people rather than putting the onus on the individual, which is really cool. So
Yeah, and it takes, like you mentioned, prompting, like it does take prompting off of their plate as well, because really what they encourage with Ella is it's a conversation. Like you don't have to prompt engineer, you don't have to be like, here's your role and here's the context and whatever framework you're using for a chat GPT. Like you literally, once it's set up and trained properly, can go into Ella and say, I need a blog post on this topic, and she'll write a creative brief, and then from there work on the content, but it's trained on, again, your brand, tone of voice, all this stuff already. So it takes like the pre-information that you have to feed every time off of your plate, but it also takes prompt engineering. It's more of just like a
mhm.
conversation with the platform.
Right. And I imagine that would be really good for systemizing, like you mentioned, like marketing processes, especially if it's like an internal marketing team where you have multiple members sort of using this. I think it would sort of create more consistency and, yeah, cohesion, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and I always talk about that with like setting up AI. It's like you create the strategy, you train the AI on the strategy, or use it to, create the strategy. But then you have to train your team on how to use AI properly, and then you need to have systems and processes in place. And I think those are the steps that it's really important to take in order to have everyone producing similar results versus, one person getting great results, one person getting terrible. Is one person's on brand, one person's not on brand. And so it's really those steps of strategy, train the system, train the team, put systems and processes in place. And that's how I think you can effectively scale with AI.
That's cool. That's cool. And so maybe to pivot a little bit, what's your favorite like non-business way to use AI,
Hmm.
if there is one?
Yeah, no, I do. I do it all the time. It's an interesting because I tore a ligament in my ankle recently. And so I put my MRI results in there, and like the doctor couldn't see me for 2 weeks. And so previously I would have like Googled each term and like tried to figure out what it meant because it was all like medical speak that I'm not medical. And so I was able to put it into ChatGPT and it was able to like literally tell me exactly what it was in plain speak and then like prepare a list of questions for me to ask the doctor when I was able to actually see him in 2 weeks, but also gave me some recommendations on like what to do over those 2 weeks so I didn't cause further damage. So I was like, that's incredible because usually I just would have like stressed and not known and searched and maybe
Mm.
texted a doctor friend, I would have tried to piece it together. And so then most recently I got my yearly blood work done. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to go back to ChatGPT. I've done so. Yeah. So I went to ChatGPT with my blood work and it was nice because I was able to give like ChatGPT my lifestyle, my context, and how do I exercise and how frequently and what do I eat and all that stuff. And so it was able to analyze like more of my story than I always get in the doctor's office, but it also was able to compare things side by side and compare it based on my life. And so I'm not saying like I'm replacing doctors by it, but again, my appointment's Wednesday for that with my doctor to go over those labs. And I just feel so much more prepared going in because I have like a list of questions where
Mm.
before, again, I would have like, if any number was out of range or anything was weird, I would have just like Googled it and tried to piece it together. And so it's like, I feel more prepared in situations like that because I'm able to use this platform or tool to be able to help explain what it means versus just having to wait. And so I think that's a really exciting benefit.
Yeah, no, I was laughing because I've done the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, oh, I got my blood test results, and I'm like, oh,
Ah,
I'll just, see. I mean, for me, it was like, do I need to see a doctor? Like, is anything? Do I need to flag anything? Is anything
yeah.
out of range? And then I liked what you said about making a list of questions. That's something I hadn't thought of, but that's really cool.
Yeah.
And then just sort of bringing in like, oh, I don't need to freak out. It's all good. Like, I know what's happening. So that's really cool.
Well, and also too, like year over year, if you kept going back to that chat GPT or however frequently you get blood work and put
Right.
it into that same chat, it will be able to, let's say you're doing that for 5, 10 years from now, like it will be able to tell you exactly how specific numbers are changing and maybe even why. And so I think that's really exciting where like my previous blood work year over year, like I don't know how much the doctor analyzes on the back end, but I would never really analyze them side by side because I just didn't really have that information like readily available. So I'm
Right.
excited about like next year, when I put in my labs just to see like how things are changing and evolving.
Hmm. No, and I think that's cool. And also because doctors usually have like 10 or 15 minutes sometimes to just check things and like flag anything. And they're seeing, sometimes like 30, 40 patients, probably
Yeah.
sometimes a day. And so to be able to do your own research and then go in kind of prepared and be like, well, what about this? And what about this? And really maximize that time is super cool.
Yeah, and then hopefully, that's how general doctors will evolve as well. Like again, I don't know that space that well, but like, hopefully they'll be able to use AI to make quicker decisions with patients based on like their 15 previous years of lab results and comparing them side by side. But
Right.
then they'll also be able to do all of their paperwork and stuff on the back end. And so again, it's not necessarily like it is in marketing, like same story as marketing. It's not replacing the doctors,
Right.
but hopefully it's elevating them
And
to
the
make more of an
service.
impact because they
Yeah.
have more information that wasn't readily available. And so I think about that same thing in marketing. It's elevating us to be more strategic because we have more information. I would hope
Mm.
that would happen in a number of fields.
Yeah, I mean, just to compare, one way that I've been using it is I'll be in the gym doing like a lift or a workout, and I'm like, oh, this, I just want to check my form. And so I'll take a video. And then what I've been doing
Mm.
is uploading the video into ChatGPT. It will review it, give me some pointers. And then, like, that just helps with like injury prevention, especially
Yeah.
because, like I mentioned to you before, like, I live in Peru and I'm in a very rural and remote area. And so, like, I have a home gym. And so, especially if people are training with an online trainer or they're doing it at home on their own, like, to have a tool like ChatGPT where they can import their results, import their video of their form and get techniques and these little anchors. Like I was doing a deadlift and it told me, imagine you've got like two oranges in your armpits and you're trying to squeeze them as you go out. Like,
Yeah.
And for some reason, that like really helped improve my form. And so I was like, oh, that's really cool, you know. So I hope that that makes it more accessible for people to, you know, get more into health and fitness if perhaps they've been putting it off, or, you know, for people who are into health and fitness, helps them improve their form or all of that. So it's become really fun using it for all these different things. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I travel a decent amount and stay in different hotels. And so, on that note, like I like to just take a picture of the hotel gym and say, plan a workout. I have 45 minutes. You see the equipment. Like, what can I do? And so, and before again, when I would travel, I would like have to look up workouts online or create something of my own because I do a gym here that does all the programming. So when I travel, I'm kind of on my own. And so it's nice because it will literally be like, okay, based on your goals, and now it has all my health data based on my labs, based on your goals.
Your house coach.
And yeah, exactly. Based on your goals and the equipment that I see, it will program a 40-minute workout. And so it just takes a lot of like, because again, before, especially if you don't have a ton of experience working out, like it's overwhelming walking into a new space with new equipment and have to like think of something to do. And so it does make it more accessible because I'm definitely better at like, you tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Right.
So it's good for that.
Oh, that's cool. No, I like it. I'm going to borrow that. So, oh, well, we're almost on time. But so for people who want to find out more about what you do or connect with you, like where can they reach out online?
Of course. So our website's ducttapemarketing.com. And then my name is Sara Nay, very active on LinkedIn. So you can connect with me there as well.
Cool, cool. And when does your book have a release date, or is it sort of TBC?
August 15th is what
Oh,
we're shooting for right now. Yes.
oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been really fun. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
No worries. And thanks everyone for listening.